we'll give it a second here to let people trickle in, especially if you're coming from the last session. But welcome to the Clinical Courses Abroad session. Thank you for joining us. Again, just give it a little bit more time. If you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to use the Q&A feature or throw your questions into the chat. We are going to wait to answer any questions until the end, just for the sake of time to make sure that that we get out for the following session to begin, if anyone's going to that one as well. But just to start, my name's Tessa Rendina. I am an admissions counselor at the University College Dublin in Dublin, Ireland, and I'm based in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I mostly recruit in the Mid-Atlantic region, but our team covers really all of the US and Canada.
Great, I'll go next. Hi, I'm Maral Dadourian. I'm with the University of Glasgow, and I'm the U.S. country manager, and I pretty much cover the Midwest, and we have other colleagues that cover the rest of the U.S. who are based in the States. I'm actually based in Chicago, Illinois.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. Travis Westlake from the University of Bristol, based out of Toronto, Canada. I lead our team's engagement across North America and look forward to supporting all of you. But now we'll shift over into the presentation content.
So in thinking about clinical courses, why would your students be looking at clinical courses abroad? We want to focus on some of the positives or the unique value of doing a clinical course overseas. First thing, really thinking about access. So as your students are looking at their options, they might not realize that they are able to do a clinical course abroad and still have those qualifications carry over, or accreditations for those universities carry over back to North America if they would like to return, or if they would like to practice elsewhere. So definitely keeping in mind what accreditations and things that different universities have as those students are looking at where they would like to practice afterwards and where they would like to do their schooling. Another advantage is being able to do enter into a program directly from high school. So just using medicine as an example, students can enter into undergraduate programs or programs that start at undergraduate level, even from high school. So this does help shorten the programs since they're typically very career focused, more intensive programs. So for example, in the US, about a 4-year pre-med program alongside 4 years of medical school, about 8 years where a medical program typically, especially looking at Europe, and I know like Ireland specifically as well, about 6 years. So you would shave off those 2 years for that student that knows that's what they want to do right away. Another unique value is also that high demands across the world. So there are high demands for nurses, physicians, doctors. So again, as that student's doing research about where they kind of want to land, they can see that there are many opportunities for them across the world and not just in North America. For the global portion as well, similar aspect, they could either come back to North America depending on accreditation and qualifications. They could stay in UK, Europe, or other parts of the world as well. And if they do want to stay, then they have that unique experience as an American or Canadian student studying in that place and getting more familiar with that system throughout their medical or other clinical course. Finally, that cost component, pretty similar to the short end. If you're shaving off 2 years, you would save money in that respect. But also looking at cost of living of where they're attending. I typically recommend Numbeo.com to students. It's Numbeo.com. It's a cost of living comparison tool that they can use. They could put in, a US city that they're looking at another medical school at, and then also put in, for example, Dublin, Ireland, and see kind of comparing what rent costs look like, groceries, that sort of thing as well.
So in preparing for this session, we wanted to establish some scope around what do we mean by clinical. In reality, the subject areas do extend much further beyond this list, but in our experience, these are the programs we tend to receive the most questions about. We won't review this in detail, but hopefully this is a helpful resource for you. Two things we did want to recognize is that the nomenclature or naming of a degree abroad often will be different. So instead of studying a doctorate of veterinary medicine, students will need to seek out any MVB or Bachelor of Veterinary Science. And then in most cases, students will be required to complete detailed research on the accreditation process when they return. So while AIRR-NA staff members are a great resource, it's always best to confirm with the true authority. So while you may be able to study occupational therapy at a bachelor's level at one institution, depending on the university and the curriculum, they may require you to complete a master's when you return back to US or Canada. While not the most helpful, we recognize some of these areas will be case by case or are anecdotal stories of, well, so-and-so did this path. So there can be some inherent risk or unknowns with some of these study paths here. On to the next slide.
Right, so I'm going to tell you a little bit more about medicine, which is by far one of the more popular programs for North American students because, as my colleague Tessa mentioned, you can actually go directly into medicine out of high school. So it's very different from what you would experience here doing pre-med and then going into medicine. The main difference is that within your first year of a medical program within the rest of the world, particularly the UK, Ireland, so on and so forth, you would be in clinical experience from year one, which is an amazing opportunity for these students. It is often an intercalated or integrated curriculum. So it would focus not only on biomedical sciences, but a lot of these programs, which are 5-6 years, depending on the university, will have a year that is intercalated where students can take a course and subjects within a different discipline. So if they wanted to specialize in psychology, for example, they can actually do that alongside their medical curriculum, which is amazing. It gives them more in-depth experience and knowledge within a specific subject. A lot of the programs are actually globally recognized. As my colleague Travis just said, it is important to make sure that you check based on the country, the state, where you're going to be returning to practice medicine, to make sure that that state would recognize the university that you are attending. I mean, they generally do if we have accreditation, which most medical schools would. And then you're going to have a very different experience from your counterparts who are studying medicine within the US because you're going to have more cultural and professional growth in terms of being abroad and looking at the different methods in terms of medicine and what's given in your clinical experience versus those students that are studying that within the US. Next slide. A lot of this will kind of be the same for veterinary medicine. And the reason why we featured these two is because they tend to be the two most popular subjects that are asked about amongst students that are going abroad. So again, it's going to be very broad in terms of their training. So a lot of the vet schools will cover all types of animals, domestic, exotic, farm animals from year one. A lot of the vet schools also have an animal hospital on site as well. And so you will have hands-on, students will have hands-on experience. It is almost like, think of it as an internship because you are placed in the workforce alongside your academics, doing your clinicals, and you're seeing all different types of animals and wildlife. Majority of the vet schools abroad are accredited by various different accrediting bodies. Some will be accredited by two as well. So a lot in the UK will have the UK accreditation as well as the US accreditation, which would make it very easy for North American students to return back to the States and practice veterinary science. And again, you're going to have more exposure in terms of a global skill set. So the different challenges that different countries face in terms of their wildlife or animals or different things like that, which will vary. So you're going to have students will have a better understanding on a global scale of the different challenges that affect vet medicine today.
Then thinking about the application timeline, of course, certain dates and everything can vary country to country, school by school. So definitely something that students want to be able to do that research as soon as they know this is an option that they're interested in. The first thing they're going to really be looking at is what application portal they're using, because oftentimes we see that the portal that they'll use for clinical courses might be different than the typical portal for most undergraduate entry programs, since it is a very different type of program that students would be entering into. So just as an example, in thinking about Irish medical schools, most of the Irish medical schools utilize Atlantic Bridge. It's kind of like, I usually explain it as like the Common App for Irish medical school specifically. So I would definitely recommend that students interested in medicine, physiotherapy, dentistry, some of those clinical courses would start with Atlantic Bridge for that application process. Just as an example as well, UCD is on the Common App. But if students are interested in medicine or vet med, we are unable to accept their application through Common App for those degrees. They can put other specific majors on there, but they would have to apply through either Direct or Atlantic Bridge to apply for medicine or veterinary medicine. So again, just checking which portal that they would need to use for that application. And then the second part of this is that, as you might have heard in some other sessions, a lot of times abroad, it's very academic focused for the application process for a lot of undergraduate programs. I know UCD specifically, we don't look at essays, letters of rec, or extracurriculars for our non-clinical undergraduate programs. But if a student is applying to medicine, veterinary medicine, that's where we're really looking at, okay, they do need a personal statement. They might need letters of recommendation. We will want to see like a CV or resume, as well as what hours they have already. I know like veterinary medicine, especially, I believe we have about a 60-hour minimum. We have 4 different types of animals that they could have experience with, and we really hope that they have majority of their hours at least with 2 separate categories. Of course, could be throughout all 4 categories as well. So just some things to keep in mind as they're gathering the documents that they need for the application, that it is going to be slightly different from applying to a typical undergraduate course that's a non-clinical program. There will also be certain test scores required for different programs as well. So UK has some specific ones that they require. For Ireland, we're looking at SAT, ACT, AP, IB if they have them. Typically, those would be test score required courses as well. The next thing would be also thinking about prerequisites. Oftentimes subject requirements, prerequisites will be listed on the websites as well. They can always reach out to a counselor to confirm what those requirements would be, typically for math or lab science, and maybe some options within that, whether it's an AP score or a college class, dual enrollment, or a high school class that they've taken, or that SAT math section, ACT math section as well. Oftentimes, a lot of international schools will do what's called a conditional offer. So if a student has met everything else, they excelled in their interview, they're offered a place, but they haven't completed their subject requirements yet, they could get a conditional offer that's conditional on them completing that subject requirement. So again, whether they decide to take a dual enrollment class their spring semester of their senior year and have to achieve a certain grade in that course, such as chemistry or any math class, or if they're retaking SAT or waiting to take an AP exam. Those are just some examples that could possibly fulfill those conditions. Finally, deadlines. These are going to vary school by school, again, country by country, based on which application portal they're using, all of these things. So definitely important for students to look into. For UK, for medicine and vet, we're looking at October 15th. For Ireland, there's not like a set deadline, but I usually recommend at least by December 1st. I would recommend even if they can get it in before November, great. Just because we start doing interviews in winter and spring, so that gives them some more time to hear back, prep for that interview if they are selected.
Now, when considering a clinical program abroad, we do have some general recommendations, and they're around select themes that we have covered here in the presentation. We've already covered accreditation licensing, but ultimately this is likely priority number 1. Nobody wants to dedicate years of their lives to discover that their academic program doesn't help them accomplish that long-term goal. In regards to entry requirements, as Tessa shared, most of our educational systems are quite transparent about the prerequisite courses. For many clinical programs, just be mindful of any testing requirements and those early deadlines. For a senior student to plan last minute to one of these programs or pathways, entry is unlikely just due to the additional planning required and additional preparation. Now, the direct entry structure is one of the things I find most exciting about these study abroad pathways. However, students need to reflect on if they have enough suitable experience. So to determine if this is truly the career path for them. For example, if you faint at the sight of blood, medicine is likely not for you, even though we know how many students are interested in becoming doctors. So are there experiences students can gain to get a true understanding if this is the best path for them? Now, finally, I'll close on building a support network. If anybody is familiar with Schlossberg's transition theory, one of the most critical aspects to a successful transition is having social supports. such as family, friends, community, on or off campus. So please encourage students to be active, and to extend this, students can consider how do they build their networks for after school. So if they want to be a vet in Wisconsin, ideally they're establishing professional networks outside of school, outside of their studies, before they even graduate. But as we move forward to the next slide.
So challenges and limitations. You can see everything's up on the slide, but I'll talk a little bit more about residency and licensure. So basically what happens, as you know, with any kind of clinical program is you're then placed in a residency after you complete the program. Each university will have an office that deals with the residency for their students. I think it's important to make sure that there can be challenges to gaining that residency outside of where the university is located. It's not to say that it has not happened. It has, but generally speaking, they have partnerships with local hospitals within the country. So a lot of students will actually do the residency within the country that they were studying in, but it's been known that they can actually come back to the States and do their residency there as well. But there will be a designated person that is assigned to them that will help them in establishing that. Again, we've mentioned this before, accreditation and recognition. It is very important to make sure that whatever university the student is looking to do a clinical program in, that it is a recognized program, and that that recognition would actually transfer back to where they want to be conducting their practice when they finish their degree. There are differences in terms of the curriculum for every country. So even just within the panel today, I'm from Glasgow, Travis is in the UK, and Tessa's in Ireland, and all three of us who offer medicine will have a difference in terms of the curriculum. It is very much spelled out though. So if you go onto any of our websites, you will see exactly what is required of students to take in each and every year of the program. So if there's something specific that a student desperately wants, I'd be surprised if we don't cover it. But they don't see it within our programs, then they should probably look elsewhere to find that. But generally speaking, it covers a great depth, and it's very different from these types of programs in the US, because as I mentioned, you start it from year one and you're in clinicals from year one. And the financial cost, I mean, studying these types of programs are not cheap. I will say this for the UK as well. It is actually the actual cost of running the program is what an international student will actually pay. A lot of the program is actually subsidized by the National Health Service as well. So bear that in mind. So they can charge more, but they don't because the NHS covers some of the cost. It can be more upfront when a student is going abroad to do this type of degree, but it does end up working out cheaper in the end. So we've spoken about costs, so definitely keep that in mind. And then next one.
Just some things to remember by region. Again, we've already hit on some of the deadlines, accreditation, outcomes, some things to look at. The only one that I want to highlight that we haven't really covered yet is thinking about Australia, New Zealand, and just in general, the Southern Hemisphere, that typically those are going to be switched for start dates. So usually looking at maybe January, February, rather than like what we typically see with August, September starts. So just some things to remember in terms of timelines and everything there.
And two quick resources before we get to your questions. So if you do have questions, now is a perfect time to pop them in there. But we did want to identify Medify is a great practice tool for students who are preparing for the UCATs, whether they be UK, Australia, or New Zealand. It's a great resource just to understand, practice, and prep for that standardized test. Generally, when I chat with students, I always advise them is complete the UCAT, understand what your score is, and then that helps you filter for the institutions that you're going to apply for, because you'll understand if you meet or exceed their UCAT historical cutoff. So hop to Medify, practice a little bit, and for that. And then Tessa mentioned earlier, for students applying to Ireland, whether it's medicine, dentistry, physio, or pharmacy, Atlantic Bridge is the provider for student admissions. So an AIRR-NA rep can provide guidance to you, but ultimately students will be working through Atlantic Bridge. Now, this does bring us towards the end of the presentation. We did want to give a quick shout out on the next slide to some of our upcoming events and tours. So if you will be in Texas or NACAC, we hope to see you. And then in the new year, we'll be on the East and West Coast for our tours. So hopefully we have a chance to engage with our members through those events. And at this point, we are going to open up the Q&A. And I see we've got a couple questions in there already. invite my fellow panelists if there's anything that they want to specifically address within the Q&A.
The first one I saw was about the BMAT, and yes, it has been discontinued. We should have updated that slide, so sorry about that. It was administered by Cambridge, and they discontinued it. So now a lot of universities that were looking at the BMAT have switched to UCAP. So just again, check each institution's website to see what their requirement is. I could assure you that for most of these clinical programs, there will be an external exam.
And that just shows how knowledgeable our counselors and consultants are that you caught that. So good on you to the individual that asked that question. The next question we have here is about the residency match process. Is it the same as the US? I would say there's a lot of similarities in terms of if somebody wanted to stay abroad, and I can speak towards the UK. So if a student is to come from the US or Canada, studying UK for medicine and to remain there, the residency and final rotation process they go through, it is a multi-stage process. It's too detailed for this, but there's F1, F2, which are rotations they go through. There's a third rotation, which is a specialty rotation. Students still need to complete a final exam. I think it's called the Royal College exam that they will do to become an accredited doctor in the UK. And it is a national system that students will apply into for those residency spaces. So it's something obviously every institution will provide their graduate support. But I know I've had some of my students, I had twins from Canada that went and they stayed. Is that they both have taken up their residency in the UK and they're actually going to stay there post-graduation. Does anybody want to field the third question we have here about UK test centers?
Yeah, I'm very confused. When you say a UK test center, so are you based in the States trying to find a test center, or are you based in the UK? Very difficult to find a test center for UK. Okay, so you're based in the States. I mean, unfortunately, that's not down to the university. I don't have any advice on that other than maybe the school can provide the support to get the student to the test center. The universities work with various different testing bodies. So if there's not enough test centers across the North America, maybe just raise that with the university you're interested in applying to, and they might have a solution as well. I haven't really come across an issue such as this. I don't know if my colleagues on the panel can chime in or know any or have any other advice.
Fortunately, not in my experience either. I think but it is an important limitation, I guess, to acknowledge that it's unfortunate that there can be pockets. We've seen this with visa processes as well, that there can be pockets that aren't properly serviced or supported. But then Tessa, maybe I'll give the last one to you, because I think you're giving some love to Atlantic Bridge.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, the people at Atlantic Bridge are super helpful and can provide a lot of support for students throughout that process as well. Again, especially because clinical course applications are just so much more intensive and involved than doing a typical UG application or undergraduate application abroad. So thank you for the shout out to Atlantic Bridge. Yes, definitely an amazing resource. I would say if students are interested in medicine, again, like they can apply directly, but Atlantic Bridge is so nice and they provide so much support. So I would recommend Atlantic Bridge for medical school applications for sure.
And while we've got 1 or 2 minutes left, no other questions. Maral or Tessa, do you have any advice or things that maybe we didn't get to chat about on clinical courses that you want to make sure is brought up that a counselor should know when advising students?
Yeah, I think one main thing, which might have been mentioned, but in terms of applications to UK and Scotland, they do want to see that a student has had some sort of clinical exposure or exposure to the industry. So that is volunteering in a care home, a clinic, an animal hospital, whatever it may be, just so they can then write about that within their personal statement. Because in the UK, personal statement is very specific about the subject. So they will be writing about medicine or veterinary science or physiology, whatever it may be. And so they can use that experience in terms of their exposure to the industry and write about it within their statement as well. But that is something that is a requirement.
Yeah, and I would just echo that as well of making sure that, with those experiences, that does help them set up better, like for that interview if they are accepted for an interview. And yes, the personal statement, it makes those pieces a little bit easier for the student to work on, having those experiences. And then also, as even Travis said earlier, it's great to already have an idea that that's what they want to do, because they would be entering into a very career focused degree. So having that volunteer experience also helps them make a decision.
Great. I think from my end, I'll give a shout out to the vet pathway. So for those of us that have an AVMA accredited program, for some of those pathways we shared, it's a bit ambiguous. You don't quite know what exactly, what does the return to North America look like? But for AVMA vet accredited programs, it's the exact same exam that a student would take from Canada or from the US. So it's the most clear-cut pathway for a student, and that's the one I tend to encourage students to consider the most. If they're really focused on vet, going abroad for it and returning back is pretty clean and clear for students. And then I think that might wrap up all our questions and bring us to the end of our session. So thank you for taking the time for participating in the Global Guidance Summit, and hopefully you enjoy the remainder of your sessions. You'll see our contact information is on the screen. If there's anything we weren't able to address or you want to learn more, I think the three of us, I can speak for us that we're more than happy to connect and answer any of your questions.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.